The hospital receipt fluttered out of her old purse like a secret that had waited too long to breathe, landing at her feet just as the wedding music swelled and sunlight poured through the open hall doors. It was stamped, dated, and signed 3 years in a row, and the name on every payment line was not hers, not the insurance company's, but the one man she thought had long stopped caring. Before we step into what happened next, take a second. If you believe in kindness and second chances, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this deserve to be remembered. The wedding was supposed to be perfect, and for the most part, it was. It was a bright, golden afternoon, the kind that makes everything look softer, more forgiving. White chairs lined the garden aisle, petals scattered underfoot, and laughter carried easily in the warm air. Guests smiled, cameras clicked, and the bride, Alina, stood glowing in a simple ivory dress that caught the light with every step she took. It was her day, the day her parents had once dreamed about together, before life pulled them apart in ways neither of them had expected. Her father, Marcus Hale, stood at a distance near the edge of the reception tent, adjusting his tie more often than necessary. He had always been a quiet man, the kind who carried his emotions like fragile glass, carefully, privately, never letting them shatter where others could see. Raising Alina alone had taught him patience, resilience, and a kind of love that didn't need recognition to exist. He had been both anchor and shelter for her, even when his own world had felt unsteady. Across the lawn, her mother, Renata Voss, laughed politely with guests, though her eyes often drifted toward the ceremony space, searching for something she couldn't quite name. Years ago, she had walked away from her marriage, believing she needed more than what Marcus could give at the time. Life had not unfolded the way she imagined. Health issues came unexpectedly, bills piled up, and pride kept her from reaching out for help. She had learned to survive on her own terms, even when those terms were painfully narrow. What she never knew was that every hospital visit, every treatment, every bill that threatened to overwhelm her had quietly been taken care of. Not by chance, not by charity, but by the man she once left behind. Marcus had never spoken about it. Not to Alina, not to anyone. He simply saw the notices, the unpaid balances, and remembered the woman Renata once was, the woman who had laughed easily, who had dreamed of a future with him before life complicated everything. And despite everything, he couldn't let her suffer when he had the means to help. So he paid. Month after month. Year after year. Silently. Back at the wedding, the moment unfolded slowly, like time itself had decided to linger. Renata picked up the receipt, her brow furrowing as she read the familiar hospital logo, the dates, the amounts. At first, confusion. Then disbelief. Then something deeper, heavier. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out more papers from the purse, documents she hadn't sorted through in years. Every single one told the same story. Every payment traced back to Marcus. The music, the laughter, the movement around her, it all seemed to fade into a distant hum. Her chest tightened, not from illness this time, but from the weight of realization. While she had been struggling alone, believing she had no one, someone had been standing quietly behind her, holding her up without asking for anything in return. Marcus noticed her from across the garden. There was something different in the way she stood, something fragile in her stillness. He hesitated for a moment, as if crossing that distance meant stepping back into a past he had carefully learned to live without. But then he walked toward her, steady and calm, like he always had been. Their eyes met, and for a moment, there was no wedding, no crowd, no passing years, just two people facing the truth of everything left unsaid. Renata's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper, but it carried more emotion than anything she had spoken in years. She didn't ask why. She already knew. Marcus had always been that kind of man, the kind who loved quietly, who stayed even when he wasn't supposed to, who gave without keeping score. He simply shrugged, a small, almost embarrassed gesture, as if what he had done was nothing extraordinary. To him, it wasn't. It was just what felt right. But to her, it changed everything. Across the lawn, Alina watched her parents, sensing the shift even without knowing the details. She had grown up with the absence of their relationship, with the understanding that some things couldn't be fixed. And yet, in that moment, she saw something new, something softer, something healing. The ceremony resumed, the day continued, but something unspoken had been restored. Not the past, not the marriage they once had, but a sense of humanity, of connection that had survived despite everything. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long golden shadows across the garden, Renata found herself sitting quietly, the receipts folded neatly in her lap. She thought about the years she had spent believing she was alone, about the bitterness she had carried, about the distance she had kept. And she realized that kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it exists in the background, steady and patient, waiting to be discovered. Marcus returned to his place near the edge of the gathering, content to remain unseen. But this time, Renata walked toward him, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of something genuine. Gratitude. Respect. Maybe even the beginning of forgiveness. Life didn't magically rewrite itself that day. There were no grand declarations, no sudden reunions. But there was understanding. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Before we close this story, if it touched your heart even a little, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this remind us what truly matters. And here's a special request: comment the word kindness if you believe even silent acts of love can change someone's life. As the last light of day faded and the wedding lights flickered on, Alina stood between her parents for a photograph she would treasure forever. Not because everything was perfect, but because, for the first time in a long time, everything felt honest. And in that honesty, there was peace. Sometimes, the greatest acts of love are the ones no one sees, until the moment they finally do.